Which of these people do you think is most likely to cheat on their spouse? An actor, a politician, a banker, or a journalist? This is Why Are We All So Stupid?
The show that explores the cognitive biases that lead us to make irrational decisions.
I'm Sarah Silverstein.
And I'm Adam Grant. So, simple idea. The easier something is to think of, the more it feels true. The harder something is to think of, the more false it feels. More often than not, if you can come up with an example of something, or if you've experienced something, then that's a good signal that thing is real, right? And if it's hard for you to imagine something, for the most part, maybe that thing is less significant. But I think that, in a lot of cases, what's interesting about it is that it totally throws us off.
I'm gonna ask you guys a multiple choice question, and I want you to write down the first answer that comes to mind. Who is most likely to cheat on their spouse? An actor, a politician, a banker, or a journalist?
I said actor.
I said politician.
I said banker.
Banker.
Actor.
Okay, why did you say politician?
Partly it's because I think it's, it's more in the news when the politicians cheat on their spouses, and then also because, being able to bend the truth a little bit can potentially seep into personal life.
What about for actors?
I think for me, it's just that's what's been in the news.
Okay, here's the thing about actors and politicians. They're famous, all right? So they can get caught. Bankers, nobody knows who they are. They're constantly traveling. They have tons of money. They've got all the confidence, whether it's misplaced or not, it's there.
Which of these metro areas has the most cars? LA, San Fran, or New York?
LA.
Also LA.
LA. LA.
LA.
Why'd you guys all say LA?
It just seems from all the pictures that it's miserable enough to have all the cars in America. Not just a lot of them, all of them.
All of them.
It might have all the cars. It's awful.
I don't think any of us could have said it better.
Which of these occupations has the highest mortality rate? Fishers, farmers, cops, or construction workers?
I said farmers.
Cops.
Fishers.
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 Okay, why'd you say cops?
The guns, maybe.
Why'd you say farmers?
Danger.
Farmers
The
are a very
crime.
hands-on, dangerous job.
What about you guys? How'd you come up with fishers?
So the idea that you could just get thrown off a boat at sea and then you're just
Do you ever
in
watch
the
Deadliest
water.
Catch?
No.
Have you
Yeah.
ever seen it?
It's terrifying. I only watch the commercials.
I haven't seen the show, but it was the deep sea fishing that got me to Fishers. There's the Mark Wahlberg movie a few years ago.
Yeah.
Which seemed really dangerous, so that's
Yeah.
kind of where my head
Wait, The
went.
Perfect Storm?
Oh,
That one,
that
yeah.
one.
That was a bad one.
But they did die,
Fair.
right?
And a
And
lot
they
of them
were
too.
fishers.
Very depressing.
And so I've never seen a farming movie where all the farmers died. So I think for me,
But like cops movies?
When you're asked to guess, okay, who's going to cheat on their spouse, you think about, well, who's the person that I know that's been the biggest cheater, or what's my interaction been with that industry? And that makes you much more likely then to be biased in favor of whatever information comes to mind, as opposed to the information that's most representative. Yeah, so the news is a classic example, and I'm sorry, Sarah, to do this to you, but when we look at what's highlighted on the news, it's usually extreme events. And so often people think that the world is getting worse in all sorts of ways, right? That there's more crime because they see these horrible stories covered, that terrorism is getting worse because that's very prominent. And yet, if you look at the data, oftentimes the very things that are being covered the most are happening less. And so, then we end up misperceiving the world.
Is there any way to combat that with thinking differently?
Yeah, so I think this is something we need to figure out in our own lives. It's also something that we need to sort of manage at work. So, personally, your challenge is to come up with counterexamples. When you know that something is not as salient as it should be, you need to go and study it more. You need to go and live it. You need to get more familiar with it. I actually experienced this in my first job. I was working as a lifeguard, and I never dove in the pool once in the few years that I did it, except when it was just really hot outside. And so, I slowly lost sight of the fact that this job could actually save a life at some point. And that started to worry me over time. So when I became a social scientist, I went and worked with a bunch of lifeguards and designed an experiment where I just took 4 stories from the news media about other lifeguards performing rescues. And the hope was that that would, motivate them to be a little bit more cautious. And the managers there said, this is insane. As a lifeguard, you know that, somebody might drown in your pool and that's why you have a job. And I said, yeah, it's one thing to know it, it's another thing to believe it. And sure enough, when lifeguards were randomly assigned just to read a few stories about rescues, they were rated after that as significantly more helpful toward the guests in their pool. They engaged in more sort of safety corrections. They caught people violating rules. And they also volunteered to work more hours because it reminded them that this job does matter.
I don't drive. Not for years. Not since I haven't driven since the Bush administration.
Next time on Why Are We All So Stupid, we try to buy people's lottery tickets for more than they paid. Be sure to follow our page so you don't miss an episode.